All right, so there have been three major shootings in the past week, and in fact, one in the past couple hours here in Ohio, in Dayton. I don't really live near Dayton. I do have a friend who used to live there. I believe he moved out of state. And obviously, this will be used as the political football again. Now, what happens often is that the media and the commenters and Twitter will jump on the shooting in the first few days and talk about the need for gun control. And then, depending on what happens in the next few days as to the shooter's identity, most importantly, racial and religious identity, and then depending on another key issue, the motivation. So their identity could be irrelevant to their motivation. They will either use it as the bloody shirt in order to promote more firearms laws, or they will move on and it'll be as if it never happened. The Gilroy Garlic Festival shooting has already sort of faded away, although in the first few hours I saw a lot of people were definitely tweeting that we have to get after the NRA, blah blah blah. The NRA is not really the most effective organization anymore. People think it is, it just is not. And people who own firearms and the one people who own many more than I do will probably tell you otherwise, that the NRA is fading in the firearms rights scenes because they just don't have the same punch and they don't have the same obstinance when it comes to defending the Second Amendment, which is essential. Now, no person who believes in the right to bear arms has ever said that these mass shootings are justified. We all believe that people should be able to live and shop and learn and do whatever they want without the fear of violence. But that doesn't mean you can guarantee that. And obviously, in some countries, for example, in the Netherlands with the Anders Breivik shooting, which was seems like ages ago. I think it was probably back in 2010 or so. There's countries where the limitations are a lot more strict, and these things do happen. And once you do restrict more of these, there will be other ways to do it. The people who go on these rampages are not so easily deterred that they'll stop at firearms. They'll go for explosive devices. They'll go for things that other imaginative ways to accomplish their goals. And the truth is that explosive devices have been illegal since the 30s, and they've been used repeatedly all over the U.S. Several, all the time. It happens all the time that there are issues where police get called for bomb threats, or there are actual bombings, and especially in the 70s, it was even worse than it is today. Granted, it's a little easier to get your hands on a firearm than it is to construct an explosive device. But the people who really want to do this will do it. But yes, it's the Gilroy shooting. The traffic regarding that has receded. There's very little word of what's going on, because the shooter, it turns out, apparently, I guess he has some Iranian ancestry. I don't really take it to mean a terrible amount, but some people are alleging that he's actually a devout Muslim. I don't know personally. And also, I would say that you do need a full investigation before you can really start to unpack what the real problem is. You can't just jump to a conclusion and say, well, because this link leads to here, this is what happened. The El Paso shooting, to my knowledge, has been already linked to a copycat from the Christchurch shooting. So, look, what happened over there at Christchurch? This guy was he set out to cause more mass incidents like this. One of his goals was to create a gun control environment where the government would step in and seize people's firearms because he hoped it would lead to civil conflict. And he hoped it would lead to civil conflict because it likely would lead to civil conflict. Okay, this is a real problem that people don't understand. These firearms are already out there. Having the police go and either create one of these ridiculous buyback programs or go door to door and try to seize the firearms from these people will actually cause many, many, many more incidents where the police and citizens will get into firefights. And that's when you're going to see this campaign erode, because if you start to see police officers losing their lives, basically getting they're going to get just Swiss cheesed by a lot of these people who have been some people have been waiting for this their entire lives. That's what people don't understand. Some people have wanted to prepare for this very contingency for decades, and the people who are calling for stricter laws, the people who are calling for confiscation, don't realize the risk that they're running because they don't care. They're not the people who have to bust in on people's doors and actually seize their stuff. And then when you start to see, now that's one thing that could happen. First of all, law enforcement deaths are going to go up. Okay, now those people who are for stricter laws and more gun control and more seizures, they don't really care because they don't actually support law enforcement anyway. They don't support law enforcement at the border, right? So why would they support law enforcement in general? They generally are in favor of the laws that are convenient for them. Whereas, people like me, I believe that we should relax drug laws. I believe we should relax firearms laws. I think we should do a lot more in order to let people have more of the liberties that they want, as opposed to encroaching on those liberties. But these people don't listen. They want the government. They want the state. They want the education system. They want the media to decide what people are allowed to consume, what type of ideas they're able to disseminate. That's really the goal of this type of just mentality. They don't really have this idea that we're going to save lives. They think that it's just so simple. You just tell people, yeah, turn in your rifles over here or else. But then notice those people who will not comply, if the police shoot them, suddenly this whole crowd of gun control people are going to be like, well, now it's Blue Lives Matter. Now we stand on the side of the law. This is the real tragedy of looking at things from the left to right perspective. There's no reason to rejoice in the death of any of these people who get shot by the police, whether they are black or white or whatever. Whether, the Michael Brown shooting, for example, in Ferguson. Yes, the officer was found to be not legally culpable. He could not be charged. That doesn't make it a good thing that he ended up having to shoot one of the citizens that he was meant to serve and protect. Okay, it's never a good thing to have officers shooting citizens, because that automatically creates greater distrust between the local police and the community. And then when people have to call the police for domestic violence issues, when people have to call police for various different casual calls, like having to rescue, let's say, it used to be, I think it's the fire department, but it used to be that you'd call the cops or the fire department to rescue pets from trees. But in any case, we don't want a society where everybody is suspicious of A, the state, and B, their neighbors. So when you start to talk about more firearms laws, when you start to talk about more drug laws, you run the risk of citizens reporting other citizens, reporting their neighbors, things like that. And then that's how you get the real police state. The real police state isn't necessarily just the police. The real police state is the citizenry that's mobilizing in order to report other people for things that don't really have to do with them. Obviously, if there's a national security threat, or if there are people who are, molesting children, or a drug den down the street where, there's dangerous people that could be robbing other people or selling dope to kids. Yeah, it's understandable. We're not talking about a society where there are no boundaries. That's not what being a libertarian minded person or a liberal minded person is. It's for sure not. You have to balance the idea that citizens should be able to walk around safe in their communities and the idea that you have to persecute people in order for that to happen. So, yeah, I think these mass shootings, the one in Dayton, I have a hunch that it's not going to go the way the media wants it to because A, the location of where it's at, and B, the time of the shooting, in terms of what hour it happened. I don't think that they're really gonna like the type of identity of people in it, but I'll leave it at that. Please like, share, and subscribe. Also, please subscribe to me on BitChute and on Minds, also on Subscribestar if you want to donate, and please also subscribe to me on Gab. On all of them except Gab, it's at Chef Leopard. On Gab, it's at Starscream85.